Tony Tonkin here from Wise, Witty and Weird. Now, I'm glad you could be with me today. As I keep saying every time I do a feed or a video, I welcome all of those people that are watching us, which is bugger all. But nevertheless, we're here persevering, doing the best that we can to do whatever it is that we can. Now, I want to have a conversation about what I guess I could call political corruptness. I hate using the word that corrupt because it labels a lot of people that aren't corrupt with a tag just because they're a politician or they're a businessman or whatever. And I'm sure that there are great politicians who have the best of intentions, and there are fabulous business people who do what they think is the best possible thing that they also can do. But I do want to raise this issue around Brittany Higgins again. One of the concerns I have is that there were so many people, it has turned out, who knew about the alleged rape of Brittany. And as a result of her disclosing the rape by this undisclosed individual, there have been other allegations levelled at this same individual. So the issue here is that there has been a pattern of abuse by a person within the same office. Now, I can't understand how that behaviour had been so unnoticed over time that if like we know who are the dickheads in our offices. We know those people that act badly, those people that get too drunk, those people that are misogynist or racist or abusive in some other way. We know who they are. Yet somehow this guy who has caused untold damage to a number of women, as it turns out, no one seemed to know what was happening. So that's the first thing. At the basic level, no one seemed to, if they did know, and my guess is they did, they still chose to do nothing about it. They didn't act in any constructive way in order to mitigate against this particular person's behaviour. Does that mean then that he was so secretive about it that others did not know what was happening? Or was he secretive about it and he did it in such ways that the people that he perpetrated this abuse against chose not to tell, because within that environment they knew they wouldn't have been supported, they wouldn't have been believed. Obviously he probably had more power and authority than they did, and that it would just go nowhere. So clearly within the environment itself, the culture within the political system, particularly in Parliament, is such that these people couldn't find a way to talk about it, and if people knew about it, they couldn't find a way to tell others what they suspected may have been happening. Or, even worse, they couldn't go to the guy that was perpetrating these abuses, behaving in this way. They couldn't tell him to stop, because at the end of the day it would be damaging to others. If we choose to say nothing, we are just as responsible for the abuse as is the abuser. And we need to make sure that if we notice something happening, that we say bugger it all to whatever excuses we might offer or others might offer to us about what it is we could or could not do. But we are in a position to be able to say, look, you got to stop doing this. But if you continue to do it, and I hear that you're doing it, I'm going to report you. End of story. But to make it worse, if it could possibly be any worse than that, the people within the government, those people in authority, including the Prime Minister, apparently knew about Brittany Higgins in particular. And some of those people were the Defence Minister, Linda Reynolds. Apparently she knew about it, but she, in her authoritarian way, she eventually dismissed it. Michaela Cash, whom Brittany went to work for after working for the minister, the defence minister, she she was very sympathetic to start with, and then she kind of dismissed it later on as well. And then there were people like Tony Smith, Speaker of the House. There are others like Senator Scott Ryan, President of the Senate. There were, who are the other ones? There's a list of them here. There was the Chief of Staff. There was the AFP Assistant Commissioner. There was Fiona Brown, who was the Chief of Staff of the Defence Minister, I think. So there were a whole host of people. So when I'm talking about, if we identify someone who's behaving badly and we choose nothing to do about it, we're responsible for whatever happens because we did nothing. That also there were a group of other people who also, after the event, probably knew about it, but also chose to do nothing. So when we're sitting back and we're wondering, well, I wonder why women in particular do not report abuse when that abuse is not, the fact that it's potentially is going to happen or is happening is not supported by those people around them, we can understand why it is that you would choose not to report it. And in this case, Brittany and her partner now are unemployed. So the victims continually be victimised by this type of abuse. And one of the problems, I think, is that wherever there is power and authority, and sort of power to me kind of represents credibility. It's about how one is perceived. It's about how we can go about validating who we are. Primarily, it's about ego. So when a person declares that there's something happening within a particular department for which you're responsible, and you try and find ways to prevent that information from becoming public, automatically you're not siding with the person who's received the abuse. Surely it makes much more sense to me if others experience abuse and they report it to you, and you're in that position of power and authority, then you say, bugger to everything. I'm just going to act upon this as an incident which I need to deal with appropriately. Believe the person. Don't interview her in the place where it happened, which is what I think Linda Reynolds did. Be sensitive to that particular victim's needs. Do an inquiry if you must, but do it quickly. Don't take weeks or months in order to do it. Ensure that the person who is the victim is safe, that they're receiving the appropriate support. Let other people know that you're doing this investigation. Let the perpetrator know that this investigation is taking place. Now, some people argue that we need to follow through on appropriate procedures and procedural fairness and stuff like that. And it's not that I disagree with that, because you're innocent until proven guilty. But there are certain circumstances whereby one needs to ensure that, or the assumption needs to be taken that the allegation has merit. And if we settle upon that and we agree that it has merit, particularly in this case where the perpetrator clearly had this sort of behaviour happening and other people would have known about it. And I guess, if you just looked at the raw evidence that may have been available at that time, 95% probability that this person had committed the crime. So, and I see, I used to run sessions on workplace bullying, and one of the most frustrating parts about workplace bullying was that the victim was often the one that was moved out of the workplace, and the perpetrator was often the one that stayed there, and the whole issue was brushed over. Well, we're finding that's the case now with these politicians. Now, politicians are there to service themselves, it seems. They actually should be there to service the public. We must remember that these people are public servants, right? And it's a concept that is lost, because at the end of the day, the only person, this incident in particular, demonstrates that the only person with whom they are interested in protecting is their own reputations, the reputations of their department, which is all about them. It's not about the individual. How different would it have been if Morrison had chosen simply to side with Brittany and worked through that issue with her and been totally transparent about the whole thing? The guy that was the perpetrator, they should have encouraged her at the outset in 2019 to have taken this matter to court and said, we will support you. And it would have been done and dusted and dealt with it. We wouldn't be going through this crap right now. But we're having this issue because they choose to focus on themselves and not the other person. And in itself, that's a crime. You know, because if you're ignoring events that happen and you're not caring about the person who has been victimized by this event, then in effect, you're siding with the perpetrator. And it comes a time where you just got to forget about procedural fairness and you just got to do what's fair for the victim. What's the procedures, particularly within government departments, are not about necessarily fairness. They're about you doing or them doing what they think is right for them to protect them. That is the fairness. Whereas it should be to protect those that have been victimised by someone else's behaviour. So I think we need to really start to think about what politicians mean, because what being a politician means. Because I think it's a disgrace. And the reason why we in this country hate politicians and despise them so much is because of this sort of behaviour. And because we see Morrison sitting up there preening himself, looking like some sort of, I don't know what's the word, parrot, some cocky, thinking about promoting himself because it's all about him. It's not about everybody else. He gives lip service to everything else. So that idea needs to be dispensed with. We need to find out who those politicians are and then find a way to get rid of them, because they don't offer any great value. It doesn't matter how smart, intelligent, whether they've gone to the best universities in the world. It doesn't matter. If they're morally inept, then they need to be discarded. It's just that simple. It doesn't matter whether they come from wealthy or poor families or middle class or whatever. If they're morally inappropriate for the position they hold, then we should recognise that and dispense with them. And my guess is that if we did that, we'd probably get rid of 80% of them. Maybe. But maybe when we're starting to think about electing them, we should be thinking about the values and the principles that they hold. And we should perhaps be asking them different questions than what we do. Questions about that test out their moral values, their moral fortitude, if you like. And particularly, I guess, some of the issues around social justice type issues, because it's around those issues that we'll find out whether they have any value. And, even I guess, discussions around economics, like fairness and equity around the distribution of income or wealth, will often help us to understand who some of these people are and whether they should be there, or whether they're representing the majority, or whether they're actually representing a small minority, namely the wealthy. So I think we should be thinking about this completely differently now. And we need to work on it. You and I. We need to work on it together. So, think about the other things we've said, and if you would like to, we would like you to subscribe to us, so you can subscribe here. And I think when this goes up on YouTube, there'll be a bit of a button down here on the right hand side that you could probably subscribe to as well. But we'd also like you to go to our Patreon site and just for $1 a month, contribute to us so we can start contribute to you. And the more people that we have to contribute to, the more interesting it becomes, and the more interesting, I guess, it will be for you as well. So join us, become a part of Wise, Witty and Weird, and we could be able to put out more and more videos, spend more and more time doing this, because Avery and I, time's limited anyway. We'd like to be able to do much more of this and have more of these sorts of conversations with you. So thanks for being with us. Thanks for being Wise, Witty and Weird. Take care of yourself, everybody, and be safe.